So let me officially start. So I'm Crystal Warren from Amazwi, South African Museum of Literature. And we would have been hosting this event in the museum, but sadly we can't, so we've moved everything online. And there's a certain irony in that Liz was going to launch the book last year in March and was the very first of the events that we had to cancel when we went into lockdown. So we finally got here, Liz, even through all the chaos and challenges. So yes, Amazwi is always, we like doing launches, we like promoting new authors, new books, and it's particularly lovely when it's someone who is, you know, a friend who comes to our events, who we know. And so it's lovely to be involved in this, not so much a launch, but a reading for Liz. And I hope everyone will enjoy this. Just also my colleague Machoba sends his apologies. He was due to host, but he was involved in something else yesterday that ended up going on till 9 o'clock. So he said, please, could I do today? So, which I'm very happy to do. So this is, just in terms of practicalities, we're going to ask that while the reading is happening, if people could mute themselves and turn off their cameras, it will just make it a bit simpler for everyone. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat, and then after the reading, we'll put the questions to Liz and she will be able to engage with that. And then at the end of it, we'll briefly put everyone can put their cameras back on and we can all see each other and wave, and that will be lovely. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Marika, who's going to start the proceedings.
Thank you all for coming. I just would like to say a few words about Ariel Publishing. So this book was published by Ariel, which is a small, Makanda-based publishing, and it was a publisher, and we kind of linked to the writing course at the ISEA, and so we are also very happy that we could publish this collection. And I remember meeting Liz actually in the first year that I've done this particular writing course. So as such, I think it is about the 20th. I'm not saying it exactly, but I think it is about the 20th collection that we have published. And I think because it's been around for about a year, Liz has been selling the books, but if you do wish to you don't have one as yet, I will put in the chat the address is ariel.publishing.makanda@gmail.com. And so we are very thankful for Liz for writing such a beautiful book that will be part of this. And then we also have tomorrow a launch of Nisi Daniel's book, Whitewashing My Yellow Bones. It's same time than today. So if any of you would like to come to that as well, then you are most welcome. And now I will hand over to Robert Berold, who will introduce Butterfly Bones briefly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Marika. So, yeah, I met Liz, well, I knew Liz. This has been typesetting so many of our books, but I met her as a poet the first year we did the MA in Creative Writing course in 2011. It was our first year, and I mean, neither the students nor the teachers knew what they were doing, but we just encouraged everyone to write, and we gave them a little bit of guidance. At that point, Liz's mother had just died, and she was very stricken, and sometimes she could come, but she carried on writing through everything, and she wrote poems, and everyone had to write a writer's journal, and her journal was and I said to her, please just just make your poetry and your journal the same thing, because really it's the wonderful context which these poems and that it was a beautiful book, and she got a distinction. She was the only one in the class to get a distinction, and it was very raw for her the whole year and the whole experience. And eventually she said she didn't really in a hurry to publish, and every couple of years I'd ask her, "Will you going to publish maybe?" And she said, "Well, not yet." And now anyway, it's 10 years later and she's published it, which is about the opposite of every other poet in the country who tries to publish before they've even just about written a poem. So, you know, it's wonderful to have this book. It's been long in the maturing, and its freshness is still completely there, because it was written really of feeling and real life, you know. So I think that's all I'd like to say. Everyone should read this book. It's a very refreshing experience to read. So I'm going to ask. So what we're going to do is read those who've got the book, and we'll start with Liz. Liz, I don't know if you want to say anything before you start reading, but please.
If people bear with me a little bit longer, I would just like to say a few thanks of my own. First of all, obviously to Amazwi for hosting this, particularly to Crystal and Machoba. And yeah, dealing with all the technical aspects on. So thank you to them. As Robert said, this has been a long time in coming, but here we are. And I'm very grateful to all of you for attending as well. Yeah, Robert's given a little bit of a background of how this book came about. So I owe him a special debt, really. That's my first big thanks is to him for his supervision and guidance when he was my supervisor at the time, and has had a lot to do with helping me to find the form of this book. So thank you, Robert. And yeah, just also to Marika, who was a great editorial support to me when it came to publishing. So thank you to her and to Ariel for agreeing to publish the book. And to all of them, Robert, Mindy and Marika, for helping me with this reading tonight. As I said to them earlier, I just felt we needed to break it up a little bit rather than you having to listen to the monotony of my voice. Will be a good reading. I'm just going to start from the beginning. Oh, I should actually, I see Karen's here, and I want to thank Karen for her beautiful lovely photography. She provided the photo, the front cover. Thank you, Karen. But without further ado, I'm going to start from page 5. I'm going to read the section from 7, and then Robert will take over from there. And painted nails. When Mom got sick, she stopped working in the garden. It was unsafe to put her hands in the dirt with her immune system so low. Her nails grew. She began to paint them again. Again? I don't know. Did she paint them before? Before when? Before my memory began? Before she became housewife and mother, her hands at work in water and washing and soil? I didn't know that before person. But I watched her paint her fingernails, and the color she chose matched the one on my toes. rein into myself. I do not sleep. Blank page speaks louder. Rain on window slips. Rain rage clouds everything. Wet. The ink sparkles in the eye when I'm this close to it, under the light of the lamp at midnight. The shadow of the tip of the pen in my fingers, like a minaret or a large cartoon mosquito. A praying mantis crawls from under the sheets, leaf green against the white cotton. Here comes the rain again, heralded by distant heavens colliding, God's shouting subsiding to irritable grumbling, before flaring up to have the last word. Raindrops scatter heavily to escape their wrath, echoing after them. A half-drowned earthworm, seeking refuge, creeps in under the door. In the early morning, the mind reaches to remember a half-forgotten dream and starts to fill in the gaps, creating a new one. A bee has traversed the snowy plains of my duvet, scaled the heights of my continental pillow, reaching the pinnacle with steady determination. It perches on the very tip of the peak, waving its legs. I share the bed with creatures, small shongololos curled in sleepy spirals, to be removed every morning. There are trees growing in the gutters and bees in the roof, and the sound of distant thunder beyond a patch of blue sky, still dripping in the aftermath. Birds are calling as if nothing has happened. There could be more to come. Expect severe storms, she forecasts, brightly smiling from the TV.
All right, so I'm going to read page 9. I sit in the center of this hum and buzz, bees taking over the room through open windows. They do not worry me if I ignore them, sitting here with my book and pen on notepad. They surround me with increasing hum and numbers. I'm at the center of the swarm, the quiet place in the middle. They land on the windows, but not on me. What can I write with my tired eyes? I learned a new word this year, encephalopathy, encephalopathy. The buildup of toxins in her body affected her brain function. She was conscious but unable to communicate. Her eyes stared. She could hardly move, just barely squeeze my finger. I lie on the couch, half awake, listening to the hum of the swarm above me, outside but also inside my head. Little bits of something are being dislodged, breaking off and falling down the chimney into the fireplace. Fragmented thoughts and words break out of my brain and fall onto the page. Bees fly fruitlessly against the window pane when there's a clear way out. If only they could discern and turn the corner. My head is filled with fluttering thoughts that I'm trying to catch with a holy butterfly net. It hums to a halt, leaving behind a silence in which the bees' frantic buzzing becomes louder. The motor resumes again with a whir and a click. The hoop, hoop, hoop of the hoopoo in the morning loops all through the day, hooping with hope. Bumblebees in the potato bush, hundreds of them, vibrate in blue flowers. Panic rising. Books piling. I must clear the space, clean the debris from the corners of the carpet where dead insects drift, decompose even as I compose. Pounding foot drummers. Monkey-shaped shadows leap across the sunlit strip on the half-shaded pillar outside the window. Live shadow puppets. A whole troop hump thumping on the roof, tails trailing. A shake of branches reveals their flying leaps into adjacent trees. Sound strings ripple between my ears. Percussion knocks against my skull bone, dripping down behind my teeth, humming in my saliva glands. The sky is blue through the window, cloudless. My eyes are adjusting. It is dim inside when I look through the window at the brightness outside. The edges of the window frames glitter. There is heat on the leaves and the repetitive sound of a bird calling. A softer light falls on the carpet by the door. A breeze picks up, blowing the branches. Look at the pillar reflected so bright, it leaves a stain on the inside of my eye when I look away. I close my lids to bright speckled darkness. The light looks hot. 29 degrees, said the weatherman in his shining dark star. When Sirius has gone below the horizon, then summer is all over, I'm told. The stars appear in the sky and on the TV screen. While I sit with an open book, a tired sofa, just here, a bee on my bare heel, and a dog scratching at the door.
Rose memoir. That night I watered the rose with salt on my face. The heavens opened and washed away each grain. Watch while the small white bud slowly unfurls as each drop soaks into the dry red earth.
I want to write everything. The wind in the trees and the way the leaves sound, the different trees dropping small fruits on the ground, the noise they make when they hit the hard earth. I want to write the grass and the scratchings from the hair, the sap on the ground in the pony field, the dirt and the muck in the water basins I scrape out with my bare hand, and the rustle in the branches of something. The mouse birds' loud movements, whistling in the bushes, and the flapping, flurrying, feverish sound when they fly away. And the way the fudge is sick in my stomach and sweetish on my swollen tongue. I can taste it like thirsty, but no amount of peppermint tea takes it away from me. Set the bee free. Listen. They're stirring in the tree behind the evening leaves. A rustle in the branches of flight unseen. The sound catches the ear before the eye moves to see. There's a movement in the grass below the meadow flowers. A ripple on the surface reveals the running beneath.
Was on page 27, Unstitched. I sit where my mother used to sit and sew a button in her place, with her pincushion at my elbow and her needle and thread. I look into the sewing drawer where the cotton reels lie, neatly arranged by her hand in color-coded rows. I choose a blue to match the color of my father's shirt and see her hand in mine as I guide the fiber to the eye. I double the strands and cut, carefully tie a knot, then pierce the place and push the needle through. As the thin thread follows, it curls and twists through invisible tears that blind me. And so I must stop and start over. I have made a mistake, must unpick the stitch and stitch again. That's my favorite poem.
A dark shape, this is page 31, a dark shape shoots across the patio from the wood store in the early morning as I stand by the back door looking out. The cocksure robin stands on the kitchen doorstep, hops, tilting its head a little closer. The crisp half moon cut out on the dark sky fades into feathery light against the bright blue morning. Tiny collared sunbirds dart in and out of the branches by the door. Liquid beads strung on the fence wire. A broken web suspended in the light between the knobwood and the old gnarled tree by the leaning gate, attached by imperceptible strands. A tree frog, smaller than a kingfisher's beak, lives in the rain gauge with a pale green spider that could sit on my thumbnail if it wanted to. This one is you, maybe. Page 34.
Oh, okay. Page 34. It's raining again. The agapanthus buds are bursting open at the seams, splitting down the sides to reveal their curled up purple tentacles unfurling through the gaps. The tracks of the buck stop here and there. They are everywhere, signatures in the mud. Canaries take off above a knuckle tapping on the water tank. Water leaks out of the hillside, flowing down the path over faded footprints in the mud. A lory cackles before flashing a red wing-tipped dash above my head. A neck-twisting glance away from the small worn trails that disappear into the bush and up the hill. A click and a whirring starts pumping from the water lily well, where a trickle escapes over the wall and runs towards the red muddy river. Roots run like rivers from the base of the ancient tree. Must I go on there? Okay.
Thank you, Mindy. On page 1, Under the Breath of the Daisies. I thought of her as I walked away from the water tank, looking at the felt flowers spread out beneath my feet, which stepped out in her well-earthed boots. Brushing through and crushing their delicate stems and petals despite myself, I felt that she was not there to see them, their yellow heads scattered everywhere, interrupted by small constellations of purple stars bursting through, and little patches of blue confettied here and there. In that moment of concentrated, fleeting grief, a bushbuck appeared in my left eye. As I startled it, it startled me, and I felt an instant sorrow as it took off in fright out of my sight. Apologizing silently under the breath of the daisies, I wished and willed it to come back, to lie again peaceably in that shady spot where it had been.
Beautiful.
Page 4. The setting sun burns a hole in my eye, while the moon waits calmly behind me in the cool, clear sky. No one's going to catch me if I fall. Lots of strange dreams slipping away, dreaming that I'm constantly searching for books that I think I've lost. Slowly, slowly, softly, softly. I find myself in a corner of books of poetry. Nothing but words to keep me company. The quest to find the perfect reading position at bedtime. One small pillow behind one large pillow to lean against. Two plump pillows to prop up the knees, ankles crossed. Duvet tucked across chest and under armpits. Another pillow angled against the thighs on which to rest. Perfect. So what can I write on this cold night?
Thank you, Mika. Okay, so I'll be reading from 46 to 47. Thank you. A thin downpour leaves petals on the ground. A head of roses leans to retrieve them. I sit on the earth as she lies beneath it. Butterflies on bare brick settle one at a time. They float in the air in pairs above the stone, the engraved granite block surrounded by smooth pebbles, carefully placed against jagged red rocks, splintered on the ground. Butterfly bones. I pluck at the small plants shooting through the stones surrounding the grave, pulling them free to clear the edges. They yield easily until I grip one last leafy stem and pull, to find it resisting me and refusing to be lifted from the grasp of the ground. I imagine her holding on to the end of its long taproot from deep inside the earth. I have to let it go, to leave it there where it remains embedded in the soil. I must water them now that the rain has gone. Standing in a vacuum of dry heat and solid silence, the air shifts suddenly and leaves swirl in scattering vortices. The wind rushes in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Liz. It was beautiful.
Thank you for all four of you for reading so beautifully. Thank you.
And thank you. And for those who came in a bit later, if you have questions or comments, if we put them in the chat, and then Liz will be able to respond to that.
Can't we say things?
No, afterwards.
Mm.
No, it's right. That's what we asked.
Can I just say that I found the reading, and even in the reading myself, it was just how I was struck with the kind of the sounds of it and how wonderful it was actually to have a reading, like a voiced reading of it. So I'm very glad that we could do this. Thank you.
Oh.
Oh, thank you. Thank all of you. Yeah, I must admit, I live in my head so often. I hadn't so much that I sort of wasn't really sure how it would sound read out loud. I think because in my head it's sort of something silent that's in my thoughts. Yeah, I'm not expressing myself very well now, but.
I thought it was beautiful. This is Harry speaking.
Well, thank you.
It wasn't read out loud. It was read out quiet, and that's exactly the way it should have been. I thought it was a delight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you. That's meaningful coming from you. Thank you. Yeah.
But
And thank you for your lovely comments in the chat. I'm just reading through them now, and yeah, it's very, very. Well, in fact, all of the sort of feedback that I've had from people who've bought the book and read it over the years, and have been so positive and supportive. So I thank all of you.
But I love the way that you integrated your grief into nature. You know, and just you and your grief into nature. So it's an extraordinary expression of that for me.
Gosh, thank you, Mindy. Yeah, it's such a mysterious thing, the writing process. Yeah, where it comes from and how it manifests.
And there's so much joy in the descriptions of nature. It kind of lifts the whole feeling of the thing. So it's the depth of the grief and the height of the joy, and they're both there. That's what's so energizing about actually reading this very quiet book. It's quite beautiful. It's so subtle.
Gosh,
At this point, can we maybe ask people to turn their cameras on so we can, yes, while we're having these chats, it's quite nice to be able to see everyone.
Yes.
And that's the memory of your mother.
Full faces.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Mindy. Thank you. Gosh. Oh, look at all your beautiful faces. Thank you all for coming.
I think, as a couple of people have mentioned, it's in that mourning process where it feels that everything is unspeakable, and how do you say all the stuff? And I think this book speaks it so beautifully. And I think all of us who've gone through that level of loss, there's a real resonance. You can sort of feel, I think it was C.S. Lewis who said, we read to know we're not alone. And there's this feeling that when you're reading this book, there's like, yes, that's it. Even though the details are different, there's that resonance. So thank you for that.
Gosh, thank you, Crystal.
I do think, Crystal, that Crystal and Liz, that this book's going to last a long time. People will be reading it for many years because it's so kind of timeless, and the emotions in it are so sort of beautifully kind of harmonized. I don't know how to, but it really is a long-lasting piece of work. It's not something you just read and say, okay, next poem sort of thing.
Gosh.
Liz, I loved hearing you read it in your own voice. I loved reading it, knowing you quietly on my own in the same kind of sunlight and green leaves, and then I've loved tonight hearing you read it and hearing your voice become your own words. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Telly. That's lovely. I'm not very confident about my own voice, and people always complain that I speak too quietly, and I speak up, and it's sort of, yeah. Wasn't really, having not done this before, I wasn't really quite sure how it was going to go. So I'm very.
There's one advantage of doing it in this format. It's a lot easier for you to get close to the microphone than in a room, maybe.
Yes.
There's a question
in
the
the
comments
earlier,
about how people can get a copy. I know we might have said earlier. So if people don't already have a copy, how can they get one?
You can, if you are in Makanda, you can basically buy one at Amazwi Museum. ask for Marike. I also put the, but if you are anywhere in the world and you want one, you can email Ariel. I put the email address in the chat as the very first one, ariel.publishing.makanda@gmail.com. It is 100 Rand, and then we will, depending on what your postage preferences are, it will so.
Reposted the address for people who've arrived later who might not have seen the earlier one.
Yeah, so the very first post in the chat gives the email address.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, well, yeah, I should thank Sorry. Sorry, was it that you, Karen?
Yeah, sorry. Can I ask, are you wearing your mom's favorite blue beanie from your poem memory on page 17?
No.
No.
But this was, yeah, actually, this was hers. It's not the one that I was referring to, but this in fact was my mother's beanie. Now that you mention it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's a lovely poem. I think that's
raised a few of her
probably my
beanies. She had
favorite.
quite a collection, I think, when when she became ill and with her chemo therapy and so on. Of course, she lost much of her hair, and my dad bought her just a whole collection of little hats and beanies and so on. Yeah, she feels very present at the moment. Thank you.
Hi Liz, Haley here. I'm not able to start my video, but I just wanted to say how proud of you I am and we all are, and I really respect the process that you took to publish, that it took time, and you were willing to sit on it, and I just admire that. Yeah, that you waited for the right time, and it's a beautiful book.
Oh, Haley, thank you so much, and I'm so glad that you're here. Yeah, it's very special. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very heartwarming to get such positive feedback from other writers who I admire so much. Haley, of course, is a published writer in her own right, with her beautiful collection that was also published by Ariel.
Well, Liz, I hope we can expect another book in 10 years' time.
I've always joked that my spirit animal is the tortoise, I think. Different levels. It sort of speaks to me. I like to retreat into my shell, and I don't do anything in a hurry.
Maybe you can take inspiration from the bees and be busy. I think we are all looking forward to the next book.
Yes.
Or the next poems as they come out.